They named it Marsh Mountain. And then when we got serious about it, someone said, well, to call a ski area Marsh Mountain would be like a dentist named Dr. Payne. You know, it's not the right connotations. And so that's when they named it Wisp, to relate it to Will-o'-the-Wisp, because the two were connected for years and years and years.
The face used to be one of the toughest hills in the East. And it was by no other reason than the fact that it was never groomed. So at times you would have moguls that were shoulder high. So you definitely learned to ski a variety of terrain on this little mountain.
So this would have been in February in the 50s, probably 53 or 54. Their revenue for the entire month of February was like $20. I mean, it could have been 21 or 23, but it was $20 or so. And he was like, we have to do something. This is not going to work. We're not going to survive if this is all we have in the winter. And so that's when his mind got to thinking, and he was looking in other areas and other resorts. And that was the brainchild of why he needed to do something, because there was nothing going on here in the winter.
Well, in the beginning, all times were tough. If you think about it, to try to keep an enterprise going based on a 3 to 4 month ski season, and that's all the money that came in, you can imagine that it was a slow growth. When Dr. Bullard, the local dentist, decided he was going to sell Will-o'-the-Wisp, he had to retire. My father said, don't you sell it. My dad is going to buy it from you. And by golly, Grandpa did. Father, he started visiting Garrett County, Deep Creek Lake, way back in the 30s. Will-o'-the-Wisp was a summer camp. All of the cabins had outhouses and kerosene stoves and the kind of refrigerator where you put a block of ice in the top and it melted down. Father and Mother's first jobs there at Will-o'-the-Wisp were working with my grandparents. Part of their jobs were to put ice blocks in the ice boxes and to empty chamber pots and do things like that.
We had a number of different marketing companies, and a couple of them kept insisting that we needed to change the name. They said, Wisp. What does that mean? There's nothing for us to do something special with. And so we were going back and forth on this. So as it turned out, our group, so it was my husband and I, Ed and Jean King, and a couple other couples, our ski trip out west that year was to Telluride. And so being the shy and bashful person that I am no longer, when we had lunches, we would sit at the picnic tables with other people at lunch, and we would talk. Where are you from? And so forth. Well, we're in the mid-Atlantic, so there's a lot of people there who are either from Virginia or Pennsylvania or Washington or whatever. And we'd say, oh, we're at Wisp. They knew immediately where we were from. And they talked about it, and they said, oh yeah, we've been there, our family has come there. And then we would be in the hot tub, and we'd have these conversations. Oh, where are you from? Well, we're from Wisp and Deep Creek Lake. And they knew immediately where we were. And so this happened day after day after day. We were there a whole week. We had these conversations every day, 2 or 3 times a day. We came back and we said, we're not changing the name. There's too many people in the world who know the name Wisp already because it's been around since 1955, and we're not changing it.
The idea of a ski area was not just Father's and Mother's idea. First of all, they went around to look at other ski areas. And then there was Mr. Naylor, Howard Naylor, who was a big ski enthusiast, and someone Father asked him a lot for advice. He was an avid skier, and he helped Father, as did many other people in the beginning.
Oakland banks would not give him any money. And so my dad, who's a pilot, had his own plane, flew Mr. Heise, I think Mr. Rudy, and another guy, I'm not sure, to Hagerstown to go for a loan there. The wind director at the airport was not working, but my dad did not know that. So he landed in a tailwind, which crashed the plane. So they had to get on a Greyhound bus and come back to Garrett County. To bring the plane back, what you have to do is take the wings off the plane. He put it on a boat trailer. Everything was on there, and brought it back and got it fixed and started flying it again.
It might have been like my 21st birthday party or something. I think I had just graduated or whatever from West Virginia, and they threw a birthday party for me, and it was at Deep Creek. They invited their friend who happened to be there for the weekend. That's Jim McCann, who owned that house. He asked me, he said, so, what are you thinking of doing? And I told him, I don't know. I think I'm going to try and stick around here in Garrett County. And, I kind of like it here. Maybe I'll try and make a go of it. And he told me, he said, well, I'll give you some advice. He said, if you want to go to work here, it's going to be tough because you're not from around here. However, he said, you need to try and work with this Ace Heise over there. And he knew they called him Ace. He said, he is the hardest working guy I've ever met. At one point, they had tried to make a deal with him to combine their property with Wisp and have a partnership, which, they couldn't come to an agreement. And Jim told me, he says, we couldn't come to an agreement, but I'd get in business with him anytime because I never saw a guy who worked that hard.
I think one of the smartest things we did was after we acquired the ownership was kept him involved. And our philosophy was, if he just saves us from making one mistake a year, he's more than earned his salary. And so he was involved. He was with the new pump house whenever we did the ski expansion and the whole pump house thing. He was having a good time. He enjoyed it, and I enjoyed being with him. It was very heartwarming that we were doing what we wanted to do, but we were also helping him fulfill the dream that he had, and it was taking it to the next step because there were 5 of us signing on the loan instead of 1 signing on the loan. I think that really made the difference.
We would get tourists to come up on the B&O Railroad. There was no place to house them. One of the best salesmen of the tours that we ever met was William Thoman, Bill Thoman. And he and Father got to talking about the fact that, there's no place to put, we have to farm these people out to all the different places. Why not try to keep it at Wisp and build them a hotel there? And that's when they started the Village Inn.
My father was a friend of Ace Heise. He helped put in some of the communication lines at the Wisp. He was a telephone man. He called Mr. Heise a stubborn Dutchman, but he had a lot of respect for him because he worked so hard and he was in the ditches digging cables and snowmaking and so forth.
Well, I always say without Mr. Heise, we wouldn't have a winter resort here. I mean, you think back 1955, he developed this ski area and that opened up the winter sports. I mean, we can now say we're a 4-season resort. He was a man that wouldn't ask any of his employees to do something that he wouldn't do. And I mean, if there were ditches to be dug and nobody wanted to get dirty, he would be down there. And even when I read stories about when they were putting the ski area in and they had to put the post in for the ski lifts, Mr. Heise was the one down in digging them out. I mean, he was such a wonderful man, very private, very, very quiet. And I always respected him, his German background. He had perfect posture.
I can tell you, he never missed a payroll, period. No matter how strapped he was for cash. He was very honest with people. I know personally of a number of people who had real personal financial issues due to health or family and whatnot, and he helped them out. He never asked for anything back. And, he got loyal employees for that. Yeah, he was stern, but, I knew where he came from and, I knew his background. I knew that, if he needed to throw a punch to straighten something out, he would. And he did. So.
I thought that being the son of the owner made me entitled at one point. Now I was 10 or 12 at the time. And I told that to Father once, that I considered myself the prince. I was the son of the owner. And Father responded by saying nothing. But he said nothing for a whole week. He just wouldn't talk to me. And I knew I had disappointed him mightily. So by the next weekend, when we're going to the ski area for Saturday and Sunday of skiing and cleaning up afterwards, he asked, "How is my little prince doing now?" And I learned something from that, because he told me, if you are the owner, you have to work harder. It's not an entitlement, not at all an entitlement. It means you just have to work harder. It was a new experience to develop winter traffic in Garrett County. Deep Creek Lake was a popular summer destination.
There was a parking lot, there was a warming hut, there was a rope tow. It was hilarious. There was no helmets, no grooming. Later on, I remember all of us standing across the slope, sidestepping down to flatten out the snow. There were signs that said no sitz marks or cover up your sitz marks. And when you fell, you made an indentation, and then you had to stomp it down so the next poor guy did not dump into your tracks. Not many ski patrol. I remember the first couple gentlemen that were there. We kind of all taught ourselves. We skied the rope tow for a couple years, and they put the palm lift in, which was fabulous. It was a surface lift. If the wind blew, it didn't bother us very much. There was a huge drift at the top of the face. When you got off to the left, it went out about 5 feet and dropped straight down. And back in those days, your bindings didn't come off very well because we wrapped leather straps around our boots. And if you fell into the drift, you were stuck and you had to wait for somebody to come and help us out.
The changes and improvements came along in small increments. When I went to work with Heise, I sat down with him, and then we talked. I said, "Well, what would you want me to do?" And he said, "Well, whatever needs to be done." And he said, to start with, at that time, there was Heise and his one son, Gary, and then a Bob Yaste. And then those guys worked outside and they ran the mountain stuff. And then on the inside, you had his sister, Doris, and she ran ticketing and the rental shop. And then the food and beverage side of things, Mrs. Heise, she kind of ran that. And that was it. And there was no other than, the guys who worked the construction side and making snow. And
the evolution of snowmaking was interesting because I never was involved in the skiing. Jerry Geisler was great help to us because he actually was an avid skier and he would get right out on the slopes. But I didn't really like to ski. My brother told me I'm the only person he knows that when you traverse down a hill, that I'd end up higher than I started because I didn't like speed and I didn't like cold. So I was not an avid skier. I was in charge of the base lodge at one point. responsibilities were fluid then. But I was in charge of the base lodge, and I would tell Father, we need more bathrooms. We need, a newer cafeteria. We need this. We need that. And why are you spending all this money on like snowmaking? And Father told me, Martin, you can have the nicest base lodge in the world, but if there isn't snow on that mountain, the base lodge is going to be empty. And so he would constantly emphasize that. And so snowmaking started out shoveling snow from one part of the mountain to the other. And then they had these weird things that looked like lawn sprinklers that spit out little pellets of ice. And they experimented with that. But Father was always deeply interested in it and in the technology of it as it evolved, and would invest in snowmaking, more and more snowmaking, till at one point there were people who would come like from Japan, where, let's face it, there's not a lot of land per person in Japan. And so to have a ski area, they had to make the most of it. They would come and look at and study our snowmaking system.
As it relates to the state of Maryland, until I'm looking at a picture of him with, I think, a senator of well into the 60s or the 70s. And we started getting known a little bit because Wisp was here. At that point, I don't think the lake was it so much, but Wisp was so different. We were the only ski resort in the state of Maryland, and that's kind of a tough thing to be. Luckily, in those days, we had really big snows. So while he was developing the snowmaking, we were getting some natural snow as well. But he took the risk, he took the chance, and he made it happen.
That our major focus then, and Heise's pet focus, was really snowmaking. So, new advances in snowmaking came along, and he had made a pretty nice personal relationship with a gentleman by the name of Jim Vanderkellen, who owned SMI, snowmaking systems from Michigan. And we used his system exclusively for a good while. And the company's still there. His son Joe ran it for a while. Now I think it's his granddaughter who's running it. Probably the first big change was when we added Chair 2. And added it was going to be a dual lift, so we only put one side of it in. So that came along. And then the next big event, whenever we added the East Ridge, and that came along because of two things. One, I-68, which started off as Route 48 until they gave it the designation as an interstate. When that opened up Baltimore, Washington in a huge way, because it took a 5-hour drive and changed it to 3.
That was the magic number, 3 hours. It's just far enough away to be away, but not too far to be able to go almost every weekend, that kind of thing.
A developer had come up, and he had bought property adjacent to the Wisp, and he went to Heise and said, I'd like to partner with you. We need ski slopes there, and I'm going to build townhomes, and which is what's there today. So that was the next big expansion, because it included some more lifts. And then it was just little by little, things came along, like the fax machine, which we used to, get the ski report out. We still did recordings and whatnot. And we, I went on the road, so to speak, and visited ski shops in Baltimore, Washington, Pittsburgh, making sure that they got our ski brochures and they were going to get our daily snow reports and all that, and work with them. Went to ski clubs and everything from West Virginia to Baltimore to, talk about coming skiing at Wisp.
Deep Creek development with Karen Myers and the different partners, they involved real estate. It wasn't only making money off of skiing, but off of the lots. And that was a business accomplishment, putting it all together, that gave them the capital to do big things. I think at the end, the Father was bemused what's this place? And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I am always going to be grateful to Karen Myers for keeping Father on. Father said, if I were Karen, he knew he was slowing down a lot. If I were Karen, I'd fire me. And she insisted that it was nice to have the founder around. And when they introduced a larger hierarchy, because it was a lot bigger and more complicated business now, you have real estate and golf course and skiing, they had a directory, and you'd see all these titles and names. And then for Father, for his extension, it was Helmuth Heise, founder. And I thought that was neat. So she kept him on, and I'll always be grateful to her, because I think we had Father for a longer time.
We did a salute to Ace Heise in 1988, and because we recognized that here in Garrett County, it's not just the summer anymore. It wasn't just the sailing and the water skiing and all the things you do on the lake, but with the ski area, if you had a house here, you could use it winter as well. All of a sudden, those lake properties started to be winterized, they started to be insulated, they had heat in them, then they started to be renovated and so forth. But we changed from being a summer community to kind of a year-round community that was really, really precious.
The winterization of the cottages, making for more year-round business. Gas station owners, grocery shop owners, even the banks noticed increased traffic. Those all created then a snowball effect where more and more people became interested in the ski area. And more local people learned to ski. Because Father was always big on that. And his partners, always big on making it accessible to local people. And there were some crackerjack skiers who learned at Wisp, real athletes.
I started skiing a Wisp in the late 1950s with a bunch of schoolmates, and been skiing here ever since. The Wisp has a lot of good memories. One of the best ones I have is all the fun we used to have on a big rock called Odin's Rock, which is where the East Ridge is now. But we used to go up on weekends when it was nice out and have picnic lunches during skiing and have a few beers, and had a lot of fun.
I started skiing here in the mid-50s, and I've had a season pass here since then till now. And I still ski here all the time whenever I can, which is like 5 days a week. When there is snow, my favorite thing at this place is Deep Creek Lake and the ski slope, because it's a year-round resort. And if it wasn't for Mr. Heise, we would be very bored here in the wintertime. He was probably one of my biggest heroes in Garrett County. If it wasn't for him, I think that a lot of businesses would not exist up here right now, because he kept us open half of the year. When the other half was summertime, and the wintertime we had nothing but him. And he really, really was the big successor for winter for Garrett County. And thank goodness he had the foresight to do something to make the Wisp what it is today. And real lucky, my dad lived up here, and we moved up here, and from Pennsylvania when I was like 5 years old. We moved here permanently, and my dad was an avid skier, and so the whole family skied. I remember digging out on Beckman's Peninsula to get here to go skiing. We all had our own shovels, and my dad would put us out there. We were like 5, 6, 7 years old. Everybody had a shovel, and we were heading to the ski slope because it snowed that night, and we had to go skiing.
I taught here for 48 years. I taught until the body quit, and numerous parts of the body quit, and still doing a lot of skiing and teaching skiing. I taught school during the week and the tutor at night, and I would come up here and teach skiing on the weekends. And teaching skiing was the most satisfying. You could make people so happy by just teaching them the little things you saw, and the smiles, and the happiness that was on their face. And every now and then there was one that didn't work out well, but it was just a lot of fun.
Gary Myers said, you should come up to Wisp, it's a lot closer. So we said, that's a good idea, we should do that. So I came up here and started teaching skiing for Ludwig and Dieter and Ludwig. So back in those days, ski areas, I think especially in the South, it was a really big deal to have Austrian ski instructors and a lot of the more prominent areas. And so they brought in Dieter and Ludwig and taught them. So, to teach a ski school. So we came in and worked for them. Back in those days, working at the ski school was a lot of fun. It was kind of like, it was kind of like Animal House. So we had a good time, but teaching skiing, I couldn't make a whole lot of money. So I had to get a second-time job. So I started tuning skis at night at High Mountain Sports. So that's how I got in there. So about that same time, I met my wife. She went to Frostburg and she was teaching skiing here. So we started dating and got engaged on the face and eventually got married. But along those times, one of my funniest memories is, the ski school, we were a bunch of ruffians and rowdy, and Mr. Heise and Jerry Geisler, they were pretty down to business. And, there was all these other guys cutting up, and, they were very businesslike. So it was kind of yin and yang going on there. And then at some point they introduced the ski school, and it was almost like a movie because, we thought we were kind of like the outlaws and these guys were out of control. So it was like every day, what did those guys do last night and who was going to get called into Jerry Geisler's office or Mr. Heise's office because they were in trouble. And if you remember, the beginning years of snowboarding was a big deal. And those guys carried on and had a hell of a time. I think at some point there was no one around here that rented them a house because there was something always going on.
The Bobcat was named, that slope was named because they found a spring, an enclosed well spring type thing, little box of thing, and it had clear water at the bottom. And when they discovered it, it's just in the middle of the woods. I mean, there were no houses nearby. There was a dead bobcat that had fallen in and was floating in the water. And that's how they named it Bobcat.
As I was teaching skiing, one of the things I had a real interest in and loved doing was ski racing that we really didn't have any at the time. So, we had formed a ski club, and there were a bunch of us who liked to ski race, and we used to set up bamboo poles and practice and whatnot. And so I went to him one time and said, well, actually, by then we had another ski school director. It was Dieter and Ludwig, and we went to Dieter and Ludwig and said, why don't you guys start a racing school? And he goes, no, we don't do that. We teach skiing. We don't do ski racing. And I said, okay. Well, I'm going to look into getting more involved in that. And they said, yeah, go ahead. So I went to him and I said, Mr. Heise, and I said, look, we'd like to do this, but I need your blessing, number one, if we did it, and a permission, and that the only thing we need, that the club didn't have money and, I didn't have the money. I said, we need a timing system and a communication system. And I showed him what it was and how much it was. I said, if you bought this, I'll never come back to you and ask you for any more money, and we'll run a program. So he said, okay, and he did. And he said, you can do what you need to do out there, and if you have any problems, let me know.
I started skiing the most after our sons were born and they started ski racing. So I had to, he was away from home a lot, and whenever he was away from home, then I would take kids skiing. So, and that's how I grew up also with them on this slope, and it has always been the best memories ever because it provided memories year-round, actually, because we would go other places to ski and ski race because of what was provided here. That's why we did everything else, and it was just always been wonderful. It continues to be, and they keep making improvements, which is just excellent for such a small area to be able to have something like this that's so special to everyone.
The direction the resort's headed in, the growth that it's had, I think Dieter and Ludwig would be proud of the ski school and the way the traditions have been held up. Maybe not quite as strict as the old Austrian way, but we still look for the accuracy, and we still have the fun that they promoted as part of the ski school.
The fact that the resort has maintained so many of the traditions and the still all these lasting people that are here and enjoying the resort, and their kids are enjoying it, and maybe their grandchildren. So
Absolutely.
I think they would be proud of that.
As Heise told me when I first went to work there, he says, "You'll never be bored." Because there's always going to be something coming at us. I said, okay. And he was right. And, whether it's good or bad, you deal with the bad and you try to latch on to the good and move forward.
What I wanted was that when my great-great-grandchildren grew up, they would be able to enjoy Garrett County just the same way that I had. And I feel as though we've come pretty close to that. I'm pretty pleased with what we have. There's a lot of things for them to enjoy here, even more than I could have imagined when I was growing up.
And he'd probably be like pulling the reins, just,
Yeah, saying, slow down, slow down. Yeah, he'd be proud. He'd be proud.
He would be very proud. Believe that too, yeah.
Proud of everybody. Proud of all the new staff. Proud of the old staff. Just proud of everything it's become.
Oh, he'd be so proud. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And to see all the improvements and on the ski area, it was things that he probably envisioned, but he couldn't afford. And funding was always a problem for him trying to move ahead. And he would be in touch with the state of Maryland, hoping there would be some grant or some kind of a discount, but he couldn't get past it. To see the development now, he would be so proud. So he's probably looking down on us now and just smiling. I mean, and I never saw him really bust out heartily laughing, just a big smile on his face. And he would be very, very happy.
Back in 72 or 73, as a member of the Lions Club, we started the blind skiing program, and the Wisp has graciously given us ski equipment and lift tickets for over 50 years to make it the longest running, continuously running blind ski program in the country. Wisp is truly our local treasure.
The children of today should use him as a model for their tomorrow.
Yeah.
I would say that.